Hi everyone, and welcome to our FilmLight tips and tricks. Today I would like to welcome Billy Hobson, who's colorist at Harbor. Billy has been working on major movies such as Lady and the Tramp, The Peanut Butter Falcon, Arctic, Peppermint. He did also the documentary The Kingmaker and the series more recently FBI. I will let him introduce himself now.
My name is Billy Hobson. I am a baselight colorist at Harbor in Los Angeles. I've been a colorist for 5 years. I've been with Harbor for 2 years. My path to becoming a colorist is a little less traditional than normal. In 2009, I started working at Technicolor as an engineer, sort of in the digital process realm. We were sort of at the bleeding edge of technology. This was about the same time the Red camera came out, and we were all figuring out how to process this stuff and fit it into the post-production workflow. Um, so it was really my job to figure these things out and sort of be the intermediate person between the dailies workflows and the facility workflows. I spent a lot of time with colorists doing both workflow training, color training, and making sure that the front end dailies processes fit into the back end finishing. Um, I really fell in love with color grading as an art form and getting to spend time in rooms with really big colorists and seeing how they work really just appealed to me. But I was still just an engineer. In 2015, I was given the opportunity to go work at a company with Yvonne Lucas, one of the best in the business. And I took that opportunity and started there as an engineer and had the idea in the back of my head of like, it's a small crew, maybe I would have the opportunity to try and become a colorist. Slowly but surely, I started working my way behind the color grading tools and figuring out those processes and training my eye with the help of Yvonne.
Now, Billy, can you describe a typical day for you at Harbor?
A typical day for me at Harbor is really just being in the suite, listening to some tunes, grading, always grading, and trying to stay creative and get into a flow state to put the best work out that I possibly can. I love being in the room with clients. For me, that's just such a fun break from the monotony of just constantly grading alone can be. But at the end of the day, if I'm working and I am enjoying what I'm doing, that for me is a good day. I also help out around the facility a lot with minor engineering stuff, as well as just kind of helping out in areas that I'm needed. I work closely with our color scientist, Matt Tomlinson, and any of the editorial processes and workflow stuff that may pop up on a day-to-day basis. I try to make myself available for anybody who needs me, as long as I'm not just absolutely slammed, which 9 times out of 10 I am.
And overall, what are your favorite creative tool on Baselight and why?
My favorite tools in Baselight, I've got a few that I use regularly. My number one is always going to be film grade. I'm a printer points guy, so I work strictly in printer points, no other tools for my primary grading. So film grade out of the bat is everything. I try to get everything as close as I possibly can using just those simple tools. And then beyond that, base grade. The base grade tool, when Baselight released that, was a game changer. The ability to manipulate the images in a perceptual fashion, exactly how it would operate within a camera if you open the iris up a little bit. And then beyond that, I'm able to just really utilize that tool for troublesome shots, underexposure, overexposure, and that combined using it in sequence with the film grade that's 90% of my work. And beyond that, like I love boost shadows. Boost shadows is such an amazing tool to kind of dig detail out of darker shots in the shadows, to be able to kind of see into the shadows a little bit more and get more information there, so you can still keep a sort of moody lighting, a moody scene, and just kind of bring out those little bit extra details that just make the difference in a dark scene. Um, and there's so many more to that, but those three tools for me are my go-tos on any project.
Okay, great. So let's move on to the tricks now. Billy is going to show two of his favorite tools and how we use them. Today it will be the base grade and the boost shadow.
So today I wanted to talk about a couple of tools that I use pretty regularly in Baselight. Baselight has always been an amazing tool for me. Baselight, the flexibility of it, the way that it functions to the control panels, it just works with my brain and how I want to approach a grade. And two of the tools that I love is base grade and boost shadows. Um, on the screen, I have a shot from FBI, which is a TV series that I grade. And here we have the main actor, Zico, who plays OA on the show, approaching a suspect in a dark warehouse. As you can see by the image on the screen, it's very dark, very flat. You can't really make out anything in the image. So I'd love to use these two tools to create some clarity in the scene. I don't want to go too far away from what the cinematographer intended, but I just want to enhance it a little bit so that you can see the actor's facial expression. You can just make out what's going on while still keeping it moody at the same time. So in my stack, I've got 3 layers. So layer 20 is my show LUT. So that is always going to be the last thing in line. And then in my layer 1, I've got my base grade tool and my boost tools. I used boost shadows way more than the other two tools, which are also great. But I especially love base grade and boost shadows for dark scenes like this because it helps me basically add more contrast into the scene without manipulating it too much or introducing too much noise. And then in my layer 2 is where I have my primary grading tools. I work strictly in printer points. Sometimes I'll use the hue shift, very minimally, as it can be introduce a little bit of noise if you push it too far one way or the other. So approaching this shot, I just want to get some more clarity out of it. So with base grade, I'm going to take up the exposure about 3/4 of a stop. I don't want to go too far. And then from there, I will add some flare, rather subtract some flare for the shot to kind of help sink those blacks back in. If I do a bypass on just what I did with that little bit, you can kind of see everything clearing up a little bit. It gets a little less muddy. So from here, I'm just going to build upon what I just did. So I'm going to switch over to my Boost Shadows tool, and then I'm going to crank that up a bit. And you can kind of see what highlights are in the image start to get stretched away from that black pivot point. So I'll again bypass that operator, and you can see how much the contrast has improved in there. You start to make out the facial features. You can kind of see the action behind him a little bit better. And this is the sort of clarity that I'm talking about. It's still dark. It's still, moody, but you can see into the shadows much better. And if I show you this sort of overall LUT versus graded, you can see how big of a difference that makes. Doesn't change the feel of the scene. You can just see into it better. Into my primary tools, I'm not actually going to do too much here because I feel like the actual colors that they shot are intended. Now, the Alexa does tend to skew a little bit green, so maybe I'll do a point of magenta and then a point of cyan just to kind of help it bring it into the world of color that I'm used to. overall, I'm going to desaturate 10%. This show is a bit desaturated as a baseline, but because of the heavy colors in here, I'm not going to go too far to make it feel flat. So I like that color contrast that's going on here. Then from here, usually I'll play a little bit with my exposure and contrast if I just want to make it pop just a little bit more. It's subtle, but it does help a little bit. It kind of just helps tip those little points of light over a little bit and add just a little bit more contrast back into it. So now looking at it, I'm pretty happy with this. So if I do a bypass all, you can kind of see where we started and where we've gone. If I play it, so you can clearly make out the actor in the foreground, and then you can see a guy wearing night vision goggles behind him. As he moves into the dark, I'm okay with that because that's how the lighting is intended. But I love being able to see his sort of facial expression as he's going in, very serious. And without these two tools, base grade, boost shadows, it's very difficult to handle these sort of dark shots and make them look beautiful. Sometimes it's the traditional tools are a bit limiting for more difficult shots, but with the introduction of these two tools, I mean, there is no shot that you can't tackle and create a clean grade with.
Okay, so I know that you've graded Lady and the Tramp. Can you tell us what are the challenge of grading a VFX movie like this, and also how did Baselight support your work on such a project?
I did the final grade on Lady and the Tramp for Disney Plus, and it's a very visual effects heavy movie. The flexibility of Baselight allows me to really be able to fine tune those visual effects into the general world of the actual show itself. When you're working in a very visual effects heavy movie, you kind of become this periphery member of visual effects uh, in a way because there's so many more people involved in the creative process than just the director, DP, and producers of the film. You've got your visual effects supervisors and all the artists that are actually creating the content that you're going to work on. So they look to you to kind of help things along and make it feel like it's part of the world. And I think when it comes to workflows like that, the flexibility of Baselight is just perfect for that type of thing. Staying organized, being able to load new versions of visual effects on the fly, and being able to switch between the two very easily to show your client is a game changer. That's an amazing tool to be able to have. Uh, and then, beyond that, it's like just the ability to utilize the mats within an EXR or a sidecar mat from a DPX sequence, etc. Being able to multiply those layers and refer to other layers to really fine tune these visual effect shots where needed to fit into the realm of the scene that you're working in it's indispensable. And I couldn't imagine doing it without Baselight.
Okay, and one last question. Do you think your profession will evolve when the COVID-19 has passed?
I think that the evolution of our business as a whole will be completely different. Um, from now moving forward, I don't with the COVID-19 crisis, we don't know when this is going to end. So we immediately had to get creative in how we were going to continue working and how we are going to continue doing our craft and telling stories. The immediate thing is the working from home aspect. As you can see, I'm in my bedroom at home with my Baselight system fully remoted back into Harbor in Santa Monica. And we had to adjust to that immediately of like, let's get these systems in place and let's all work from home. And that's not just in our industry, that's pretty much everybody. And I think that broke a barrier that was so pushed back against by many workplaces, and we've seen how well it can work. Speaking personally for myself, I mean, having a system at home allows me to be way more flexible with my scheduling. I can work sort of more odd hours to get the work done where appropriate, which allows me to help my 6-year-old son with his Zoom class. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Um, how it's going to move forward, I'm not sure. I think that there will be some sort of middle ground that we reach once we kind of get back to some sense of normalcy. In-person client sessions will become the norm again, and there's always the how do you grade a theatrical movie at home? You can't. You kind of have to have a theater to do that. So it's really all kind of up in the air right now in terms of how it's going to evolve beyond how much it's already evolved. But I think that people are more resilient than we give them credit for, and I think that everybody's kind of going through the same thing right now. So um, there's a lot of understanding happening of having to reschedule things and having to give in to pressures of what we're all dealing with at home right now. And the biggest thing for me is not being able to see my coworkers who are all good friends of mine. I miss that camaraderie. I miss that sort of little escape. Um, so I do think there will be some return to normalcy, but how far that pendulum swings will take time to really know.